Everyone, welcome to Women in Bus Wednesday. Today we are doing our return to school bus operations, and we have a great panel for you today. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get started as everyone continues to log in with just some housekeeping information, and then we'll get started with the panel. So ABA has created a virtual code of conduct. It is about just, respecting the speakers and one another during any virtual events that may go on. All of this information can be found on the Women in Buses events page through buses.org. If you are a first timer with us, what Women in Buses is we are a group within ABA made up of over 300 members from the travel and tourism industry. So we've created a network to support each other, talk about what's trending, what's going on with one another. We utilize social media to get to promote our members and get different messages and stories across. We have LinkedIn, we have Facebook and Instagram. And then through Women in Buses, we have a leadership team, and that's made up of our chair, Elizabeth Hall, and our past chair, membership, marketing, operations and maintenance. This is our current leadership team right now. Just keep in mind our leadership changes every 2 years, and 2021 is going to be a change of leadership. If this is something that you are interested, stay tuned. We will have some information for you in the upcoming weeks about what these positions entail, and we'd love to have you join us. So we'd like to have you help us keep our database updated as well. Women in Buses has a database within ABA that has our photos on there, as well as all of our current information. In order to maintain that this is current, ABA created a how-to guide, and that's listed there. And just make sure you have your ABA profile complete, and that will automatically update the Women in Buses database. If you are no longer with your company, but still want to be a part of Women in Buses and stay connected, there is this website, htta.us, that you can update all your contact information in there. Kim Grivach is hosting another book club, and that's going to be starting next week. So if you are interested in doing that, you need to sign up just as soon as possible. She has just a couple of spots left open. This time around, it will feature 2 books, The Servant, A Simple Story About the True Essence of Leadership, and its sequel, The Culture, Creating Excellence with Those You Lead. This is Kim's 3rd round of the book club, and she's had proven success, so sign up today. So I just want to go over the next set of upcoming webinars. So next week, we have a follow-up to today's with a return to motor coach operation and student travel. And this will be a panel discussion. And then on the 14th, a return to destinations, and we'll be hearing from Virginia Beach, Branson, and Louisville. Then on the 21st, we'll have a passenger travel experience. So this will dive into people who've traveled since COVID and what the changes they've seen. On the 28th, it'll be financial recommendations for business and PPP loan forgiveness. So we'll hear from accountants as well as Wells Fargo and Coach USA. On October the 16th, we will have our second Meet and Eat virtual luncheon. This is open to all of our members, and it's just a casual event to get to know one another. There is a separate sign up for this that's different than our Wednesday login. So if you are interested in that, just shoot us an email and we'll get that information out to you as well within the next week or so. Just a reminder of what the login for that is going to be to sign up. Okay, so that is all I have. And now we're gonna go ahead and get started on our panel discussion. So again, we're at return to school bus operations. Today's group of panelists is going to be Taylor Hannon from School Transportation News, John Meier from Badger Bus, Pam Martinez from Dattco, and Alison Klein Sherman from Klein Transportation. We're just going to go ahead and get started. And Taylor, I'd like to invite you to speak first and just hear what's been going on at school transportation news.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Taylor Hannon, the associate editor with School Transportation News. For those that are unfamiliar, we're a national magazine, and then we also put on, several events throughout the year. So we actually just had our virtual event at the Bus Technology Summit last week, and it went really well. We kind of talked about some of those new technologies for school buses that are also helping to address some of those COVID-19 challenges. So, whether that be adding cleaning to kind of like the pre and post trip inspections using tablets or, school bus Wi-Fi, routing software for social distancing practices. That kind of was all talked about, and more. So I would be actually really curious to hear what the panelists are doing in terms of technology adoption and how that's helping to kind of meet some of those COVID-19 challenges.
Great, thank you. Does anyone, any one of our panelists want to chime in there and talk about some of your new technology?
At Klein, we had adopted actually last year using technology for our pre-trip, and we have added to that checking the cleanliness of the bus. But that was something that we added that works in conjunction with our fleet management system.
Great, thank you. So why don't Allison, I'll let you take it away from there and just kind of introduce yourself again and what's been going on at Klein.
I'm Alison Klein Sherman from Klein Transportation. We're in Pennsylvania, and we have one school bus contract. Our school is currently in session. They're doing, they're calling a scaffold plan, in that elementary goes every day on a normal schedule, and middle school and high school are going hybrid. They're doing a 4-day school week. Group A goes one week, and then Group B goes the next week, so that there's 10 days between the end of one session when a student goes to school, between the end of their in-school session until they go back for their next in-school session. The school district is hoping that should a student be tested positive, that they would miss the least amount of in-person learning by going with this model. We kind of like it because elementary is going 5 days, so we still have our buses going. All of our buses are going out on the road all 5 days. That helps us with our contract and the payment and the way our billing works. Knock on wood, so far we've only had one positive case on one of our buses. Through that, I think really the key with everything with moving forward with COVID is being willing to be adaptable and learning as you go. So in response to that, we're working with the school district to come up with some better seating chart tracking. The idea is that should a student become positive and be on the school bus, that only those students that were within 6 feet of that student need to quarantine. However, in the situation that we were in with the positive case that we experienced within our district, that student, I think that day that they were on the bus, was the only day that they had ridden the bus so far that school year. So they weren't on the seating chart. And because of that, they ended up needing to quarantine the entire bus because they weren't absolutely positive who that student was exposed to on that bus. So we're now working to come up with better ways of tracking that. And we're working with TransFinder. That's our routing system that we use. They're working on coming up with an updated route sheet or run sheet that would show or have columns for each day of the week, that as the students get on the bus, it's checked off that they were present that day and actually did ride the bus that day. And then accompany that with the seating chart so that we have a very clear idea each day of the week exactly who was on that bus for better contact tracing that way.
Thanks. What is your capacity on the buses right now?
They're allowing us to seat 2 students per seat on the bus. We have taken the bottom cushion off of the seats in the very front row to allow a space between the driver and the first row of students, but that was not a requirement by the school district. That was something that we asked for.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Pam, do you want to let us know what's going on with Dattco?
Sure. So
I'm sorry, can I just jump in? Sorry. Allison, I'm just curious, your TransFinder, how are you getting those kids checked off? I mean, how are you doing that as they're doing
It's not electronic. They're working on our printed run sheets, having a column that then our driver at each pickup and each drop off is going to have to manually check off, which is not going to be a fun process or a timely process, but that was the best that we could come up with for right now.
So at Dattco, we have school bus transportation contracts throughout Connecticut. We have several districts that we serve, as well as 2 districts in Rhode Island. And I think that we have every combination possible. We have 1 district in Rhode Island that has not started yet. They're going to be starting in the middle of October. We had 1 school district that actually, and it was planned this way, that started on Labor Day week. They went the 4 days after Labor Day, and then they are shut down for a full month. So they'll be starting in the middle of October. We have some districts that are going the 5 days. We have other districts that are kids A and B go on Monday, Tuesday, nobody goes Wednesday, and the other students go on Thursday and Friday. We have most of the districts that are doing a 4-day schedule are having Wednesdays as their no school day. 1 district actually has a Friday, and in Rhode Island, it's Monday. So that actually helps us with, any driver shortages that we have. So as I said, experiencing it all, and the whole, the schools that are on the, half the kids go on Monday and Tuesday, it's keeping obviously the capacity down on the buses, and it's keeping the capacity down at the school. Experiencing it all, we haven't had any major problems. We have absolutely had some employees test positive. We've had students tested positive, and we've got protocols, but the protocols are working and we're proceeding forward. We haven't had any of our districts actually shut down at this point yet because of positive tests. They are closing a school here and there. And some of our districts also, like the high school's not going, but the other levels are going. And I have to say that when we first heard this, we're like, how are we going to manage all these changes and who's going and what have you? But it actually, you adjust and it's working out fairly well. One of the things that we do is, and is we load from the back forward when they're loading in the morning, and that helps, so there's not a lot of back and forth. Obviously in the afternoon when the children get off, that's a little different. And this also helps us keep the seats nearest the driver from, from having somebody sitting within 6 feet of the driver. So that's what we're doing at Dattco.
Is Dattco full capacity as well for the buses?
Yes. Yes, the state of Connecticut did not have any restrictions on the capacity of buses, but our counts are extremely low. The line at the schools where parents are dropping off is extremely large. So a lot of parents are choosing to transport their children, and they are offering virtual learning as well for any parent that doesn't want to send the children. So we have a lot of people that are doing the virtual learning. So, you know, we are not experiencing buses full at all, which is really helpful. You know, one of the things that I did early on is, you know, our motor coach and our sales and service division never shut down. So I had created a booklet of protocols, and you know, I thought I was pretty good going into the startup of school. And my playbook went from 2 pages, were 6 pages plus a comment page. All the different scenarios and everything, and you know, making sure everybody knows what to follow was what I found to be super, super critical in helping us through. So I created, you know, a playbook that's very expanded, and it's got, you know, it's guidance and protocols. When someone has symptoms, when somebody on the bus has symptoms, when you've had an exposure outside the workplace, if you know, it's all the different ramifications and explains what the steps are. And then it also has, when a person, if they have to stay out of work, it has the guidelines for when they're going to be able to return to work. And then I created a questionnaire that has to be filled out for every person that asks all the questions. So we're finding out, you know, where they were in the workplace, who they were exposed to, had they been exposed to anybody else. And so that form is really helping, and the whole guidebook is helping as well. And then one of the other things that we did is, because we are so, you know, we have so many different districts, and we have 3 directors and a vice president and somebody above him, that we hold a conference call every morning at 9:30, and we review the cases, what's resolved, what hasn't, who can come back to work, who can't. And so we're sharing everything on a daily basis. And we also have one point of communication, one final command center. Basically everything goes to me at the end of the day, and all the guidance is coming from me to make sure that we have consistency. And I'm really sorry I volunteered for that position because it is quite busy. But it is, you know, it is working. You know, I think consistency is important, communication, and giving people the tools so they know what to do. You know, our first case, the first terminal manager, of course, was a brand new manager. We had promoted him from an operations supervisor, and you know, his terminal actually made the news from, you know, some employees testing positive. And you know, so trying to make sure that our employees, our management system is fully educated and what the protocols are and what to need, you know, what to watch for, and everything has really been really helpful.
When you created the guidebook, in regards to the policies for when the drivers can come back to work or not, is that something that you as Dattco developed? Did the state give you guidance on that, CDC? How did you come up with that?
So I started with the National Safety Council, read what they had, and then I referred to the CDC for additional guidance. And then I went to at the state level and took all the information. And then, like, CDC says, you know, if you're fever free for 24 hours following, you know, so many days, you can return to work. State of Connecticut has 72 hours. So our guidelines were whatever is, you know, it's the 72 hours that someone has to stay out. So we have the same, regardless what state you are in, we're having the same protocol, same guidelines, and being very cautious. We took the most cautious approach.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. I think that that's probably, you know, an area of concern with a lot of companies, and what exactly we should be doing with employees when they're exposed, whether it's on the bus with another student or just outside of work. So I think having that guidebook where it's just this universal spot that states all of that information is such a great idea. John, do you want to chime in on what's been going on at Badger?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Aaron. And Pam, I'm sure you didn't volunteer for that position, did you? So I'll give you a little idea what's going on first, just the amount of business and how we're working in and around Madison. We have 2 contracts, the whole city of Madison and then suburb of Verona. It's been, I mean, since the summer, as we all know, we were just really dealing with a lot of information. At one point, we were going to have full school and hybrid versions. I mean, we've gone through so many different scenarios and routing to finally now we're operating. And in Madison, basically, we're operating just K through 2. And they're going to only certain schools, and they're not even teachers there. These are college kids. It's called MSCR that are hired there. And it's more like almost like a daycare that's going there. So there is public instruction, but we're running about 40 yellows. In special ed in Madison, we're probably running at about 60%. So that's somewhere in around 60 hands. They're actually meeting with their teachers, and that's the only area that's happening. In Verona, there's it's fairly similar, but they do have teachers in the classroom, and that again is K through 2, and that's only meeting 4 days a week. So it's been good and bad. The bad thing is there's not a lot of work in between. So your school bus drivers are used to getting quite a bit more work, and they're not getting that. And everybody's being patient. We've not had a positive case in our company. We've only had 2 children that have tested positive, one in the summer and then one not so long ago. I'm not sure if I mentioned our capacity on yellow is 12. So we're running with not a lot of kids on. Do have seating charts, are backing them up with old technology. It's called video. So we can actually go back and look and see that they're making sure they're in those areas. It's worked really well. And we do have the protocols like what everybody's been talking about with personnel if they are exposed or test positive. But fortunately we've just not had to use much of that. And so it's been going well. I think the most difficult part that we have is knowing what's next. Where are we going from here? It's a real struggle when your superintendent can't tell you and the board members can't tell you. And I think one of the most difficult things we're dealing with is what's in the press. And just, kind of what's going on there. So that's been hard. So it's kind of where we're at right now. I don't want to talk too much on there, but.
John, is there a plan for, I know you said just through 2nd grade, is there a plan to transition the rest of the students back into school?
Yeah, both our districts are, they're surveying to see what kind of response they can get. I think they're definitely planning to what that next step is. Now, what that's going to be is hard to determine yet.
Mm-hmm.
I would say we're in a very cautious area in Madison, and so we'll see. The next was going to be the end of the first quarter was really kind of their next benchmark to see what they want to do from there. Mm-hmm. And that's been the hard part. So I was going to go on. I know Aaron, I've shared with you a few times how difficult it's been to recruit and get drivers, and we've lost a lot of people in the 6 months. And some have come back. Some of them did it because obviously they were concerned about their health, and some moved on to other jobs and needed the hours. And so now trying to find new people to come in and then deal with all this messaging, it's all over the place. So it's really been a difficult thing to do. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Yeah, but I would say it's going fairly smoothly for what we're doing right now. I mean, it's really going, even though they're all like brand new routes, this is nothing like we used to run last year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this seating 12, I mean, I thought we were bad in Massachusetts. We have 23 capacity, but 12 is very isolated on the school bus. But that does lead, what you were stating about the drivers kind of leads to the next question I was going to ask. What is everyone doing about a driver shortage, and if you are experiencing it, for us as a company, we're definitely seeing it here in Massachusetts, but we're fortunate in that all of our districts aren't fully running yet, so it hasn't become an issue for us, but it's definitely something I think down the pipeline. And the biggest thing that people need to understand too is there's a lot of training involved to become a school bus driver. It's not something that, you know, you just show up, apply, and you're on the road. So what is everyone doing in regards to that? John, do you want to start? Like,
Yeah, I can start, and actually, you know, maybe that would, and I don't know, Taylor, if you guys have posed that question, you know, I mean, you know, where is everybody? What percentage are you running, and could you run 100% right now? Badger would definitely struggle. I don't think we could just turn the light switch on and be right back at it. It's hard to grow when you don't have jobs to grow into. So right now, as we're getting people qualified, they're becoming bus attendants or things like that, and trying to keep them engaged to give them hours and experience. And then, you know, so what is that? And our districts do know that, so we're going to work with us. So we're going to, you know, as we do grow, and we hope if it works out right, it will be continual, gradual growth throughout the year, hopefully getting us to 100% at some point. But that's hard to do when you don't actually have the driving jobs right now.
Taylor,
I know I was supposed to tell you what we're doing. Gosh, we're really working hard on communication. You know, we are marketing and advertising. We're going to be working on a video that we're going to be sharing on social media. Next week, I'm collaborating with one of our school districts, and we're going to be showing how successful we are taking the kids to school, showing teachers, showing the kids, showing the drivers. And then we're going to be doing kind of a joint, I don't know, so say plea, but, you know, I mean, you know, we need your help. And if people have time, you know, these are paid positions. This is a great way to get in and contribute to your community. So we're going to be doing this with the school district. It's the first time that a district is ever willing to market with us. And they're going to use all of their resources, going to TV and everything, to get this message out. So that's going to start next week that we're doing that.
great, yeah, great idea. Taylor, what's been going on that you've been seeing kind of with the driver shortage across the US?
Yeah, so we did a survey, and I was just trying to pull up the results for that. And it looks like the average school district, you know, contractor has lost about 5 drivers this year. And that's out of, you know, about 82 responses. People have lost upwards of like 30, 35 is what they've been saying. And so, but the average is around 5 is kind of what we found. But we've also been seeing, you know, a lot of school bus drivers are essentially being shared between districts. So, you know, if one district is going virtual, you know, you can share some of those drivers with a neighboring district so that they can stay employed, and then they'll be there when the district does go back to in-person learning. So we've been kind of seeing that. We've also been looking at incentives. So what incentives are, you know, districts offering school bus drivers to keep them on staff? You know, are there hiring bonuses? And so we're going to be talking about that a little bit more in the November issue, is, you know, what can you do to keep these school bus drivers amid everything that's kind of going on? So that's what we've been looking at and what we've been seeing.
Oh, great, we can't wait to read that. Pam, what about at Dattco?
Oh, we have instituted a referral program for our drivers. We always had one, but we upped the amount significantly. And it seems to be really helping us. We are getting quite a few referrals in, and I think it's helped that we put a tremendous amount of resources into getting ready for school. As I mentioned earlier, we have plexiglass around the, you know, desks, and definitely between dispatchers and operation supervisors and the drivers. And we did a COVID training, COVID awareness training for every driver before they were allowed to go into the bus. And, you know, our protocols that we've set up. So our message was, we're doing everything possible to create a safe working environment. And even prior to the start of school, we had 2 webinars for our drivers to sit in on, where we had our workplace coordinator, safety coordinator, and somebody from operations with a moderator with questions and so anything, trying to put the driver's mind at ease and going over everything that we've done. And I think all those steps really have helped with our drivers. We did have, we did lose more than we normally do over the summer, but not as much as we expected. And we do have a lot of, we always went after the retirees. And so we do have some areas where there's a lot of, older people in the workforce. And some of those are, those were the majority that said, it's time for me to retire. One of the things that we also did was, and we spent a lot of time trying to decide what's the best thing for somebody that just, has a fear and doesn't want to come back. We want to let, just quit and walk away. Or do we want to try and, say, hey, you can take a leave of absence. One of our concerns is, Connecticut, we have, the regular unemployment and they get the extra $300. And so, sometimes it's more inviting to stay home. And so we wanted to make sure we did not encourage that as well. But we did end up doing a 30-day leave of absence. And that, out of 1,400 drivers, there were about 70 that ended up taking that leave of absence, which, 70 is, a big hit. But we do share, we call them travelers. And so we have people from other locations. And, one of our locations, believe it or not, has 20 spares. And she can hire with no problem. She gets applicants all the time. She's got a full list of people that are going that are in the training field. So we use those locations that have, we just keep hiring in those locations. Obviously, there's a cost to us for that. But then we, they have set routes in other locations to help us until we can get enough drivers in the locations that are short. And for the most part, we had one terminal that got hit really hard with a lot of leaves requests. But besides that, it was sporadic. It was, one here, 2 here. So, and some locations had none. So that worked out well. The one thing that is really hurting us now, and I started some outreach this morning on it, is for DMV, when you go to get your permit, or you're sending people for their permit test once they finish the classroom, and you cannot get a permit test in the state of Connecticut until middle of November right now. That's the earliest they're scheduling because they're booked up because everything is online and limited. You schedule online and so you just can't go to DMV. And that is a huge, huge problem because, we already have a long time. Now, you get somebody in and you get them through the classroom and now they have to wait over a month before they can get onto the road. And so trying to figure out how we can retain those, we're calling them all the time. And because this has been going on from the beginning, but now it's just gotten really bad. So that's a big problem. And, besides trying to stay in communication and offering refreshing courses, but we are losing trainees because of it. So, we're working to try and get that resolved.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, that's definitely, you think, that's such an important thing that they should be moved up to priority because we need the schools back. So
yeah,
in order to fulfill the service for that. I mean, I know one of the things that you had mentioned about, doing incentives and that can be a challenge too, where a lot of, the companies haven't had income for, the past 6 months. So then having the funding available to do incentives is also somewhat of a challenge. So I think the thing that we're looking at as well is like, what can we do? What can we promote that we already do to get the message across of why you need to, be a school bus driver? What are the benefits? Do you guys allow for children to ride, someone to bring their children on board one of the school buses?
we do, Erin, as long as the school district allows it, and they're very cooperative. But the one thing I will say is, funding, obviously, a lot of companies lost a lot of money over the past few months. Our referral bonus is paid out in stages, over 4 stages. So it's not anything, it's not a hard hit all at once. So it's spread out throughout the year.
Yeah.
It kind of helps share the cost, or spread the cost.
Allison, what about at Klein, and what have you been doing to kind of maintain drivers or attract new ones?
So we have been fortunate in that we only had a few drivers not come back this year. And also fortunate that part of our training program for our motor coach side is that we're training new motor coach drivers on a school bus and encouraging them to get that S endorsement since they're learning on the school bus and they're testing on the school bus first. And we start them out doing school bus charters, so they're real familiar with the school buses. So we have not all of our coach drivers, but a handful of our coach drivers do have that S endorsement that they are able to do home to school transportation. So those few holes that we did have, we were able to fill with coach drivers that they don't have work right now. So they're filling in there. And then we're also using coach drivers to help out with some of the activity, athletic trips and things like that after school, where in the past, that's been a kind of a tricky part for us, where the school bus drive, when our charter side is doing well, having school bus drivers to do the activity runs plus cover all of the home to school runs sometimes gets tricky. So we're not having that issue right now because we have those charter drivers that are able to step in and handle those activity runs, so that the home to school drivers are strictly doing home to school runs. We do offer an incentive, a bonus for referrals that we pay out after half of it after 6 months of employment, and the other half of it after that referred employee is there for a year. So that's how we handle that and spread out that cost, like Pam had said, splitting it up. So that's, knock on wood, thankfully, we've been able to cover all of our runs. We are, like I said earlier, one district, so that's a lot different than the companies that have multiple districts.
Yeah. Just kind of, you touched a little bit when you mentioned training. So ongoing training, are you doing that virtually with your drivers, or are you having that resuming in person?
So right now we're doing the majority of so any classroom training we're doing virtually, and then on the road training we're scheduling just in the trainer with one individual. But everything that we can do training wise virtually, we are doing virtually, and our state is working with us to do that. They do require, if it's training for a new driver to get licensed, we're scheduling that out with them in advance. They need to know when we're having that online class so that they can theoretically pop in at any time and overview that online training.
And you're doing, as far as like a general drivers meeting, you're doing that virtually as well?
Our start of school drivers meeting that we had in person. We did it outside underneath our school bus shed, and we asked everybody to bring their own chair. So they brought their camp chairs, sports chairs, whatever. We had X's marked on the ground so that they were distanced, and we talked loud.
Mm-hmm. John, are you guys doing virtual training, or are you in person?
We're doing virtual, and we adapted to that early in the summer. We're also doing virtual hiring. So all of our meetings in our hiring department are done virtually. The only time that we meet with the individual is when they're being onboarded, and then they finally come here. So yeah, everything's done that way. We are doing so much video, it's unbelievable. It works so well. And where before we would get together and do lots of our training, everything now is being put in video. And so it's been great for, it's been very efficient. It's there, you know, some of the positives that we're really learning, you know, some good tools right now to help us that I'm sure we'll continue to do, you know, even post pandemic.
So how are you keeping your drivers engaged and feeling the sense of community that's lost a little bit from the in-person meetings?
You know, we're sending lots of text messages, so that's probably our best way to communicate. So we'll have links to more communication. They're doing, as you know, drivers love the radio, so we spend more time on that. You know, thanking them. It's tough though. That's one of the harder things. You know, we don't encourage people to come inside. You know, we adapted porta potties to try to keep people outside as much as possible. They schedule time if they have to come in, trying to do at least amount of paper, just trying to keep things as safe as we can. But it's not that we're not meeting with them, we do. And we're just being, you know, we're always in masks and careful and distancing when we're doing that. So I think that's a challenge. You know, I think we have to try to do more that way. We've always had a lot of functions. I mean, we would have lots of get-togethers at all of our areas, our stations. We'd have separate parties and donuts and just kind of those things, you know, every couple weeks. And we just haven't been able to do that. So that's something we're missing.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge across everything because you don't want it to be, you know, obviously I think we'd all love to have everyone back in the building and back to our old ways. And that's not something that's just possible at the moment. And how do you express that and get that across that we are still this community, we care about you, and you know, not have, you know, the coldness, if you will, of the experience by not coming back into the building.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just think really one way that I know that, and I just reminded me, I need to do it more, but just me getting on the radio and, you know, your leaders getting on there and just spending, you know, a minute to talk to them. They really enjoy that. And so that would probably be a really good thing to do.
Okay, could you morning announcements, John?
Hey, Erin, along the same lines, you know, it is really challenging. And one of the things that we did is we gathered everyone's cell phone numbers into a database where we can send out text messages. And we do that on a pretty regular basis. And then we had never had an intranet. And so we created an employee portal due to this. And we post things on there all the time. So we'll send out a text, you know, to check the portal for updated information. And, you know, we put things on there, whether it's interest of something going on with somebody, you know, with an employee or information, what's going on with unemployment or, you know, with the medical cards, anything that is, you know, that is of importance to their license. But one of the things that we did is Don, who's the owner of our company, and his two boys did a video. And then we posted the video of them, you know, talking to the employees with a message of, you know, of what's going on, and, you know, that we, you know, thanking them. And it was that, you know, family touch. I think that, you know, we always try and put a family touch onto something. And you know, I received a tremendous amount of positive feedback from that video that was on there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. Taylor, have you looked at that at all as far in school transportation news?
We have, it's a lot of that, you know, video conferencing, a lot of the calling and checking up with your employees, just seeing how they're doing, you know, making sure that they're feeling appreciated. But I was wondering if anyone experienced any learning curves with their school bus drivers and trying to get them, you know, accustomed to using this technology more often. And, you know, even something as email or cell phones, have you guys had problems, you know, training your school bus drivers on how to use the technology while being apart?
I can answer for Dattco. We've had a couple, but very few, and the managers have been great at helping with those employees. The state of Connecticut passed a law a while back, and it went into place this year where we have a window to get everybody trained in sexual harassment training prevention, all employees. And so we took advantage and we moved everything, it's online. And so throughout the summer, we've been having this. And so we kind of graduated people into it and kept expanding the group and expanding the group. And for the most part, I think, you know, in today's world, a lot of people are, this is the way of life for them. And so we didn't have a lot of learning curves. And for those few that we did, we were able to help them and they adjusted and it's gone really well.
Yeah, I think we've started virtual drivers meetings here utilizing Zoom, and I think for the most part, I would say over 90% of the people don't seem to have a problem. They all have access, they're logging in. It's been going extremely well here for us.
Bless you, whoever sneezed on the phone. Same thing here. Zoom was, we're doing driver meetings on Zoom and they're going really well. That's it. That's really, it's amazing. In fact, I think they're better than the in-person ones in some ways.
So this kind of open up to anyone here. So what do you think the greatest tool or success that's come out of the changes that you've made since COVID?
For me, I think that because we have training, you know, so many different locations, when we were doing the classroom training, we'd have to have several classroom instructors and we would try and centralize. And, you know, one of the groups would be tied up bringing the trainees in. And so it would delay the whole class for everybody. So I think the efficiencies that we're gathering and the ability to reach everybody, some people have second jobs and weren't always able to stay for a safety meeting. And now we have a link where they can, you know, it's online, and when they get home from their job, they can access it. So I do think that, you know, something that's been so negative, there's some positives out of it. And for us, it definitely is the efficiency with utilizing, you know, the technology in that way.
Yeah, it's something that we didn't think of before, and it's really relatively simplistic concept, but you're right, it has a way to reach everyone and at their own schedule. Allison, what about yourself?
I would say for me personally, the biggest positive is that it really showed me a true glimpse of just how dedicated the school bus drivers that we have are to our company, and willing to really do what they need to make it work, and their flexibility. I was nervous going into, you know, when we started making the phone calls to find out just who was going to be willing to come back and who wasn't. I was really nervous about the outcome. And, you know, they certainly had questions. They had good questions. We made some adjustments to our plans based on their questions. But they also were willing to give a little bit on their end too, and understand that some of the things that they were asking just weren't going to be able to be taken care of the way, you know, they were really looking for less passengers on the buses. That's not something that we can really control. And they understood that. On the other hand, they were really wanting the buses to be fogged every day. And initially the school district was going to provide fogging for the school buses every day. And coincidentally, right after we had our driver meeting and told all of our drivers that that would be happening, they decided that they were not going to be doing that. We felt as though that was because it was so important to so many of our drivers. We've now started, we're fogging our buses every day for the purpose of our drivers, even though it's not required by our school district now. So we showed them that we were on their side there and had their back with that. And I think really they've learned from us our commitment to them, and we've learned from them their commitment to us. And that was just a really good feeling for me.
Yeah, that's great. John?
Well, I think both Pam and Allison said the two things. I mean, there are some efficiencies we've learned, and then it's just really shown the character of the people that we have that are working here and their ability to adapt, because and then we're not done, and they're rolling up their sleeves, and they really enjoy what they do, and they're hanging in there, and that's huge. And that's been the bright spot of all this, is to show really what we're made of.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I was just going to state that as we sat here, when we did this summer, and we're all sitting here and no one knew what was going on. We didn't really know if we were going back to school, not going back to school, and all the stress and how we were going to make that happen. And then here we are at the end of September. You guys are all calm, cool, and collected. It's really great to see that, things are running successfully. So I just want to take a minute and before we kind of conclude today, and just open it up to our audience to see if anyone had any specific questions they wanted to ask to the panelists. If you want to type that into the chat box, we can go ahead and I will ask that to them.
Karen, while you're waiting for some comments, I just have one thing that I'd like to share with the group. And I want to start by saying, I'm not sure where this is going. There's a program through the Department of Labor, through different, through the state's Department of Labor, called the Shared Work Program, and it's federally funded. And it was initially set up for like manufacturers when business was slow. So instead of laying off employees, you would share the work. And so instead of everybody having a 40-hour work week, you'd have a 20-hour work week and nobody got laid off. And so I reached out to the Connecticut Department of Labor and I said, well, our school bus drivers are on a 4-day work schedule. I don't have work for the 5th day. Is there any way this program could be extended for those circumstances? And he said, right now, and this is for Connecticut, and I'm moving on to Rhode Island because I just completed Connecticut's application today. He said, absolutely. He said, definitely I should apply. They're being flexible. And so I am submitting the application today for all those drivers that are on a 4-day work week. And all they have to do in order to be eligible for this program, they can't participate in the regular unemployment. They have to participate in the shared work program if they're going to, and only that program. But if they have a reduction between 10 and 60%, they're able to participate. And under unemployment for a partial, typically if you're only missing 1 day, you're not missing enough, you make too much and you're not able to collect, it disqualifies you. This program allows for that. And not only, so if my application gets approved, our employees will be able to receive unemployment benefits for that 5th day. And also if there's any federal subsidy, like the $300 that's going on, or if the $600 come back, they would automatically qualify for that as well. So it's really a win-win. And also this program, any employees who are collecting unemployment through this program versus the state, the company is not charged with those benefits. So not sure if it's going to get approved. The person I spoke to at the Department of Labor was very, very encouraging. So, you might want to reach out to your state departments of labor and see if it's something that you could apply for your drivers too.
Yeah, that's great, especially the part about the extra funding with the 300 and the 600, because that's a good challenge too of getting people to come back to work when they're making that extra fund. So it is, to me, it is the best of both worlds if you're on a 4-day schedule. I have not seen any questions pop through the chat. Just kind of give it another minute. If somebody does have one though, you can certainly unmute yourself and ask them. But if not, I do have another question for the group. So in regards to the cleaning policies, have you adapted them? Are you paying your drivers any additional time to clean? And what does that look like? Are you cleaning in between tiers?
Well, go ahead, Pam.
Yes, we've instructed our drivers, they have to wipe down the tops of the seats and the high touch areas between every tier. And then when they come back after the route, a little bit more thorough cleaning. And then they put a sign on the seat that says this bus has been sanitized. So when a driver comes on, if the sign's in the seat, they know that the bus is ready to go. And so, we're paying for whatever actual time it takes for them to do this process, but the expectation is it's really, at this point, we're seeing about 10 extra minutes.
Mhm. Is that something that your districts are compensating you for, or? Yes, they
They're
are.
working with that, and it varies by district. But yes, for the most, yes, no. All those details are still currently being flushed out.
Yes, and I understand.
We're doing the same thing. After every kid is dropped off, the driver's sanitizing. And then once a day after morning routes, they're all being fogged. Their pay, we do increase their rate, the amount of time that they're working to accommodate for that. The other thing we're doing is our drivers are driving at least 2 buses, some 3, because we want to keep everything running and moving around. The last thing I want to do is leave a bus parked. So for extended amount of time. So we're swapping, PPE, and some drivers have to have, the same signs, everything, and they're rotating around those buses. So that's another thing that's it's something we can do that by having them do that. And that's an interesting dance, just coordinating that and knowing when they're switching and what bus they're in, because as you dispatchers, if you've ever done it, you can know how difficult that can be, and especially in GPS when you're looking for somebody and they're in the wrong bus. So.
So our drivers in between tiers are spraying down the tops of the seats with just like a squirt bottle with disinfectant, and then wiping down the touch points of the entranceway. And then after the morning runs, all of the buses are fogged, and we're doing that in conjunction. So there's one driver that's doing the fogging of all the buses, and that's also the driver that does fueling for us. So as she fuels the bus, she goes through and fogs it. And then after she's finished with the fueling, she goes through and fogs any of the buses that didn't need to be fueled. So it's really just one driver that has extended hours, and we're finding with our fleet, it's about 45 minutes to an hour each day that she's getting for doing that fogging.
Yeah, it's a relatively short amount of time to get, that accomplished, which is the nice feature of fogging, is that it is so quick. So if we're going to adapt something that really takes care of a lot of issues, that's a nice, quick, easy way to go. So before we just close this out, I just want to hear if you could all just share like your one last, tip going forward that what we can do, whether it be, some sort of a cleaning or driver or just an office, like what would you just give, the school bus operators a tip before you're leaving? None.
I'm going to say just continued communication with the drivers and just keeping up the best communication that you can to give them comfort that you're doing everything you can to keep them safe and the kids safe.
Great, thank you.
I agree with Allison. Communication is really key, especially if you have more than one location. And, I already said my big tip, which was my playbook. I'm so grateful for that. It's really coming in handy. And then, making sure that, hopefully you won't have a lot of activity, but if you do, to have a tracking sheet. So you're tracking the situation with a scenario, and then you can always look back to make sure you're being consistent, or if something didn't work, modifying what you're doing.
Great, thanks.
I apologize. I was distracted. I missed the question.
What tip would you give us, John, for a successful school bus operations this year?
Gosh. Yeah, I mean, it's really just being patient and communicating, and like everybody that's coming to these, I mean, you're networking all out and trying to get really good information. And what we're reading online, what, you know, Taylor's printing a lot of great stuff. So it's just keeping on top of it, I think. And the one thing we haven't chatted about, which would always be an interesting topic, but we're talking about a lot of things we're doing. And then there's also the financial aspect of all this. That is another interesting thing that you know, that affects a lot of this. And I'm in touch with a lot of our peers around the area, and you know, certain districts aren't being so generous, you know, so there's a struggle with that. You know, companies are trying to make it, you know, cash flow is difficult. So that's a whole nother element to how you're reacting and how you're kind of dealing, and what you know, the other thing is too, you know, just throwing out kind of all these different areas, but you know, we want you to, you know, you got to get built up. We want you to get built up, but yet we, you know, we may shut down, and yet, you know, and then they're not sure really how they're going to fund you, and so you put that big push and investment to invest and get people in, and you don't need them. You know, so there's all those struggles, and that's all with communication with your district and making sure you got that real good plan going through there, because you can really get jacked around during this time of all this uncertainty.
Yeah, it's very valid. Like, everything's going great today, but you know, in 2 weeks that could all change, and that's just something that's in the back of your mind at all times.
It could change tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Someone just asked, what is the cost of the chemicals for fog errors? Are there any better ones than others? I would say personally, I think that it's relatively cheap for the chemical itself, but I think we're all utilizing probably our own. So not really answering what's the best one or not.
To me, I think it's, you know, it's whatever you can, whatever works. What's the easiest to use, and you can get everybody trained so that they're doing it properly. I'm sure everybody's probably using something different. There's so much stuff out there. But I think it's just making sure you got good protocol in place, because these are chemicals, and, you know, not used properly, people can get hurt. So you want to be careful with them, just like everything we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, John, not only can people get hurt using the wrong chemicals, it could also damage your vinyls on your seats as well. So be wary of what you're using.
Well, fortunately, Jeff, you're around to replace them. So in case they need new seats, we can do that. But no, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of things to look at, you know, and we spent a lot of time going through this. And, you know, Aaron, you and I chatted a lot about disinfectants early on, and it was hard to get them. It was hard to get sprayers right away. You know, we were all kind of in this mad rush, you know, and but that's settled down. I think sanitizing's gone really well, and everybody knows their role there. So, you know, the final part of that is just making sure that all the supplies are in and are being mixed properly, and it's safe, and everybody understands how it's doing it, and making sure it's in controlled hands. You know, you just don't let anybody do that.
Also, when you're using whatever chemicals you're using or whatever your process is to make sure that they're actually treating COVID-19, because not all chemicals, you know, antibacterial, people assume, oh, it must be okay for COVID-19, and they're not. So make sure you're using effective products.
Also, document your training when you're training your staff to use either the foggers, the sprayers, or just the spray bottles. Document your training so you have a record of it. For, you know, God forbid something happens down the road, you got to prove what you did.
Thanks,
Another
Jeff.
layer.
Well, Taylor, did you have any final closing insight on anything you've seen?
I don't know. I'm just trying to learn as much as everyone else here. No, I mean, it's just kind of STN is going to continue following this and continue writing articles on, you know, what school districts are doing. as they're transporting students in person. So I think we're just going to continue listening and continue putting up articles.
And I'll give you a little plug for your podcast one more time to make sure that you guys are listening to their podcasts, because they're very relevant of what is going on as it happens. Well, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. You've been really insightful, and I know I've learned a lot from all of you. So I appreciate your time, and I will ask you back another time as well, so stay tuned. And if you're not a member of Women in Buses, we really would love to have you. So if you are interested in joining, if you could join, you send an email to wib@buses.org, and we will add you on as a member. So please remember to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And thanks you all for being here. And we will see you again next Wednesday for a return to motor coach operations and student travel. Thank you, everyone.